So if we come across here, what we have, and I'll just show you some stuff on ours, it's probably the easiest thing. We have BitCube access, and if I looked at, say, an order entry sales cube, because you probably all understand and recognise that. Now what a BitCube is, it's basically, it's just a report, sort of, kind of. And it sort of looks a bit like Excel in terms of over here you've got something that looks sort of like a spreadsheet, and I hate to say it, but you've got scroll bars. So you get to scroll across and so forth. Now you can see I've also got some scroll bars up the top here. Now that's just stuff that you can look at basically. If I right click on this, hidden magic once more, go to dimension arrangement and go to multi-line, you'll see that here is all of the stuff that we have in our sales queue. Now basically this is driven from whatever your sales database actually is, and we have things like reporting categories and generic departments and generic products and products. There's all sorts of hierarchical stuff here to do with products and customers and so forth, and dates when things happen, either in terms of financial years and periods or straight transaction years. To change your view of this, if you're not interested in individual financial periods, left click on the field, take it up the top here somewhere, finger off, and you now have yearly summaries. If we were to make this straight calendar years, just bring the transaction year down, drop it, financial years out of the way, I now have transaction years. If I want to bring this with months underneath, bring it down, drop it, I now have my months going across here within years. If I want to do a month-by-month comparison for month-to-month across years, just change the order. Grab hold of that, drop it there, and I'll now see January 2005 alongside 2006 alongside 2007. If I wanted to get some more detail in here, what detail do I want? In our structure, we have things called generic departments. Underneath, so here's my totals for that. Underneath generic departments we have generic categories. This is your tree structure that we were talking about earlier, Craig. Beneath generic categories we have generic products, and beneath generic products we actually have real life products. What's beneath? So the order that you drop these changes your views, so to speak. The stuff over here in terms of the grid, and I'll just give us some more room back here so I'll scrunch some of these things up. The stuff over here that you're seeing is what we call facts, numbers, dollars, cents, quantities, whatever they are. You can cut down on the facts that you're actually seeing, so you might just be interested to know how many you sold and what your profit was. So just from the drop down, select the things you're interested in, hit the plus, and now we're just seeing quantity sold and physical profit. At the moment this is broken up by generic department, by generic product, by generic category. If you just wanted to get all the products there, regardless of where they are, just get rid of these things that would have given you subtotals and so forth. If we're interested in transactions, let's say on a yearly basis, but just for the last 3 years, you can also unselect things. The star button reverses everything, so everything that was selected becomes unselected. Minus unselects everything, plus goes and selects everything, and the little star goes and reverses everything. So at the moment, just for the last 3 years, side by side. If I wanted to find out, in total, what was the most profitable item over those 3-year periods, just come across my total column. Little button up here that sort of has things going downwards, so to speak. Click that. So I definitely do not want to sell any more small green Cooper S Minis. We have lots of people here that likes Cooper S Minis, and we obviously sell them at a loss. So here's my worst profit. Roll, 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 roll. My best thing, I would like to sell more of these DJ assemblies, please, because they are my most profitable line. However, if I come across to the 2007 year and do exactly the same thing, sorts once more, and we need to come up a bit because our most profitable thing there were red chili Coopers. It's more than minis tend to feature in terms of our database. If you wanted details of G, profit negative, bing bing, alarm bell, back here in 2006, wonder what happened. What we can do is hone in on just that one product. It was called a Mini S something or other. So Mini was, actually I will get its name, small green Cooper S. So asterisk small green something or other, go and limit it to that. That's my small green Mini Cooper S that I found, just as a wildcardy type thing. Unselect that, go and select absolutely everything again, and reverse. So now the only thing I have in here is my small green Mini Cooper S, and what I'm going to do is come in and find out who the customers were, what the invoice numbers were, when they actually took place. Transaction date should be here somewhere. Transaction week. Transaction date, there it is. Okay, I'm going to get rid of some of these totals. So to get rid of the totals, just turn them off. And if we come down here, we should find where the really nasty one is. How rude. It was the small green Mini Cooper S's. Don't know, might have been over there to the right, was it somewhere? Our totals are right down. Oh,
You
there it
could
is.
take a transaction date and transaction number out.
Yep.
Go back to customer, see which ones you made the loss on. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a
select
ca-
only that one customer.
it's a case of
Dissect.
here's every answer that your database can offer in terms of sales. What's the question you want?
There's many
Right.
ways of answering.
Now, if this is, once you get this as, here's something I'm interested in, here's something that actually has, this is a report I'd like to run many times, what you can do is come and, you can save those as what we call views out to the database, and like a standard report, so to speak, so I can simply, yeah, like a template. So here I have my dodgy products view, whatever that actually was. At some point in time I defined that this was a standard report I wanted to do for dodgy products, and that's my report. If I had Excel on here, which I don't, just let me get across to my real screen. Shortcuts. Internal. So, just let me get back into that same thing. Just remember to turn my menus back because I don't like things like that. Go back from sales cube, doesn't matter what the cube is. Sure. All the processing that's taking place is actually out in the client, so there's no big nasty hit out to the database or whatever. You'll see now that I'm actually in Vista. I've inherited a whole stack of nice Vista things. I'm just going to load up that same view for dodgy products. Just click on it. And go and do the same thing in terms of applying. So there's my view. If you wanted to share this information out to someone that didn't have access to BIT, it'd be nice to be able to give them this in Excel or something. Got a button up here that looks vaguely like Excel, and if you hit that button, we'll do this as a formatted export. And with a bit of luck and a lot of disk rattling on my computer, it should, any minute now, stay tuned, real soon, there's Excel, and that's fine, open it up, but there's my physical view
It's a nice formatting.
of what we physically had.
So to get back, you'd have to have that same format. Yeah. Excel.
No. BIT is just a view product rather than an import type product.
Okay.
Another function.
Yeah, it's just a way. You can do things, like say this average sales thing over here. We don't actually have a thing called average sales. That's been defined as a user fact, the same as you would in Excel. Put a calculation in, and that's simply been defined as sales over hits. So how many times, what the total sales value was divided by how many times we sold it, and that gives us an average sale value type thing. So you can do math and so forth in it as well once you actually export the cubes and so forth out. If this was something you physically just wanted to print out, you can hit that little print button there. Once more it will rattle, and there we've got 100 odd pages, 140 pages of report that you could actually go and print out if you wanted to. Although once more, from file, you can also do a save as, and you can save this as text, comma separated Excel, Word, Web document and so forth, which probably shouldn't surprise you given the fact that you can do that with all the other things as well. So as I said, the Visage BIT, in terms of reporting and so forth, if you have something that you want to be able to slice and dice and manipulate and get into and so forth, it is really just a question answered. It's just a case of defining what the physical question is that you're after.
And is that all generated from the dictionaries? Or there's a bit more to it?
There's a little bit more to it. I mean, you can. There is a designer facility for Visage BIT itself, but as I'll tell you, if you want to have this discussion, you are probably better off writing an actual program for it, and that's simply because you can then have some smarts in your program and make the extraction process about 100 times faster. But typically what we do with the BIT cubes is we just go and regenerate them every night. The people that are looking at this tend not to be looking at information that is up to date. Having said that, we have other clients that they do need it up to date because they want to see what's happening out at their stores around Australia, so they will actually have cubes being built every 20 minutes throughout the day, so they can actually see what's happening where sales aren't happening. If they're in the middle of a peak sale period and one of their stores isn't actually performing, I'll get in touch with the manager. What's up? Oh, right, you arrived late. Thank you. They know what's going on.
And also sales performance too.
Yeah, well, let's have a look. Recorded salesman, right? So we just come and drag this down. Who was our best salesman? Right, if that was a report that you're actually after, let's get rid of the financial years and so forth. So best salesman since year dot, depending on how you want to measure it, that's them. Let's rank it in terms of profit, rank it in terms of sales. Right, hey presto. Simple as. If you don't like the fact that those things have got so many decimal places to them, that average sales figure was a user-defined field, so it's my fault, being the user. And that's because here I didn't put an output conversion, so it actually did the math to as many decimal places as it could fit. I just changed that to be just 2 decimal places. With a bit of luck, that will come back and look pretty. That's it in a nutshell. That's Visage BIT. So, as I said, if you equip your customers, or even equip the people that you would like to be customers, with a tool like this, as I've explained to Alan, it's a two-edged sword. You need to be careful because once they've got this, they may never need you to write another report again. And so there are techniques that you can use to do that. But just in terms of the ease of access, like you put someone in front of something like this, and just to be able to get a report by salesman, by customer, by just going like that.
So what is the criteria, Ross? Like, to see all the drop downs and the sorting and that.
Yep.
Is it again the basis of setting up good dictionaries?
Partly, but it's also, in this case, it's just a case of exporting out the data, because all of the sorting and so forth, all the filtering, like if you want, at your moment, your customers are ascending, they can now be descending. The filtering and so forth, this is every customer that's in there for this selected set of data and so forth. So all of that just happens out of the client-side machine. So
this is actually part of the
It's
license?
a separate
It's
thing.
a total separate thing. So
So-
it's an add-on.
It's an add-on which can be installed all by itself.
Right.
Nothing else from Visage but just
Okay.
this.
So it's
And
like a third-party sort of product.
yeah, except that all of these things are under the
Oh,
Visage
Visage.
banner. They're all designed
Like
to
Adobe
work.
together,
Yeah, they're all
together.
designed to work together. But if all you wanted is a way of being able to produce invoices and fax and email them and so forth,
There you
this
go.
doesn't become part of it. But you can just put in Visage Reporter.
Yeah.
If you wanted to let people be able to slice and dice their information every which way, then you put in Visage BIT. If people want to be able to have nice GUI screens and all that sort of stuff, then you use the actual designer component. So it's sort of like a shopping list or a Lego set. It's just a case of you put the pieces together
Yeah.
to solve whatever the issues are that
And
the customer
do you
has.
bundle package or anything like that? So like there's the ultimate Visage package, or it's just all.
Oh, we haven't finised developing the ultimate Visage
Right.
package. But no, there are bundles for developers, so to speak. We tend not to do those to end user customers, and that's simply because of the repetition aspect of it. But yeah, Visage BIT is it's just a solution waiting for a problem. Has to be set up, but once it's set up, we have organisations that live, breathe and die by the BitCube. I remember going into one organisation and we built a BitCube remotely and took it down. And I asked them a very simple question: who are your top 10 customers? Wasn't real sure. On the phone to the sales manager, hey Bob, who are the top 10 customers? Rattle off, top sales manager knows, top 10 are. And the question was, okay, well, who's the top 10 by profit? Yeah, that's them. Yeah, you got 4 right out of 10. Because the people that they thought were their best customers, based on sales and so forth, if you measure it by profit,
It's completely.
they were not there. They were up there, but they weren't actually there. And there was one organisation that was a surprise. They hadn't actually expected these people to be where they were. And it's once more, because the whole thing with Visage BIT, it's free format. There's nothing preset. I don't know how you're going to want to drill down, or which angle and how you want to slice and arrange these things. Our traditional product, we had 400, 500 standard sales analysis reports. These days, when we equip people with Visage BIT, they have one BitCube, and from that they can go and generate 500,000 different reports if that's what they physically want to do. We still have the old reports there. Old habits die hard, but it's just a case of you don't need to necessarily do that.
But you've got to have the information in the database.
You have to have the information out there to be able to get it in the first place. So yeah, it's physically just a case of sucking information out from the database itself. So as I said, there is a designer which you would use, which let's be safe, Visage. So over here on design, there's a thing that allows you to design BitCubes. We probably have some in here that have got stuff in them. There we go, an asset type thing. This is done, gut. But basically you nominate a file that the cube is from, just drag the things across. This is a cruddy file, but you'll get the idea if we just go and put something in there, just come and drag and drop it. And then you nominate whether this thing is a dimension, customer, salesman, that sort of stuff, or if it's fact. If it's a fact, whether it's a sum, minimum, maximum, last, average type stuff, whether it's an aggregator, it can be formulas and so forth. But most of your things are going to be dimensions, because for every half dozen, there's probably 3 or 4 facts, dollars, cents, quantities that people are interested in, but lots of ways they want to get in. So you can just build up the cube as a drag and drop type thing, and then have it built overnight. But as I said, you can actually do that using the API and write a program. It's just faster. So, but you can give people the drag and droppy type thing. To an end user, you don't necessarily want to give them that? Has to be some mystery left. Sorry, some revenue opportunity. That's a bit cute, but hopefully it's given you an idea of why I said that reports, to a certain extent, for us are relegated to a fancy forms designer type thing, because a lot of the things that people would traditionally think of as reports, far better with like a BitQ. Just far better, far more flexibility.
Sort of particularly the financial area, they, the information is there. Like I'm
It's a whole kit to do it already.
board reports and stuff like that.
It's the whole package.
Just enables, takes you in terms of your capability up to a whole other level in terms of what you can actually provide people from this old technology called PIC. Okay, so other things you can do in terms of screens. Sometimes we will bring out a new version of Visage that will require you to resave all of your screens. So mass update simply gives you a facility to do that. You can come and put criteria in here as to what screens you're actually after. Use your wildcards and so forth. Go and do a search and go and find 3 in that case. And then you can just go and do an update. So sometimes we make changes to Visage that are so radical, in inverted commas, that we actually need you to go and save all of your pages again. Now, rather than you having to go into each one individually, there's this mass update facility, so you can just come and identify the things that need to be changed and select the all type button, hit the update, and it will sit there and go and do the work. So you go home and watch what comes up in the morning.
That was one of your questions, wasn't it?
Oh, the change control.
Yeah.
In a fashion.
Yeah.
So while that's going on and getting off that platform, just let me get back across to where we were. And we're on.
As a developer or designer, is there any sort of log that you have that monitors the changes you've made, the problems you've fixed?
No, not at the moment. It's something we're working on. Once more, it's one of these things we've been taught when our larger developers want that. These small developers find it to be a real pain. So if you're talking about a 1 or 2 man band, don't want that sort of overhead.
The big boss.
If you're talking about 3 or 4 people, it starts to become more of an issue. If you're talking about 30 or 40 developers, it's something that you certainly want to get a handle on.
So where are the objects stored? Like the screen definitions, the stamina version of the field definitions and things like that? Are they stored in the dictionaries of the files, or they're stored in a separate file?
How do you mean? Which things? Our extended dictionaries?
Yeah.
Okay. Our extended dictionaries live over in our own file. Actually, I'll do it from here. It will be easier possibly. So we go to here. So the dictionaries. So the Visage dictionaries live in a file called vDictionary. Right, and that's where our extended definitions are actually stored. So this is a superset of what your standard PIC dictionary actually has in it. From this we will go and generate a PIC dictionary as well for the actual files themselves, but this is where our super dictionary physically lives. All of the data, everything that you do is stored back on the database. Some of the stuff that you do, like web pages and style sheets and so forth, is also then published out to the website, because you don't want to have a database hit just to go and get a new page. So things that should logically be out there are mirrored out there as well. But because the underlying data is actually stored out onto within the multi-value database itself, it also means that the stuff that's out on the website can be regenerated. Now that's the Visage stuff. Obviously, if you have images and a whole stack of other things out there, that isn't something that you would have on the D3 database itself. So it's important then that your backup regime includes information that's stored out in what I call web space, stuff that you're accessing, those images and so forth, that you're actually accessing from the Visage application itself. So it's important that any backup strategy that you have is backing up not just the D3 database, but also those external data stores of, in your case, Craig, the sound, the recordings of the physical telephone conversations and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to make sure.
Yeah.
That,
The thing is, like with Feed Dictionary and things, I mean, I'd be the only person there at the moment. If I was going to make any changes, you know...
don't change V Dictionary. Anything with V, don't touch. Look at it by any sense, but don't.
So if I set up a new dictionary item, it doesn't save it in V Dictionary?
It does.
Okay,
Yes.
well, can I finish?
Yep.
Okay. I back up those files at the beginning of the day, then at the end of the day I can compare what's there now to what was there on the backup, and it'll tell me all the items that I've changed, surely.
This is a D3 backup.
No, just a copy of the file. A copy of the file. I do a whole lot of work during the day. At the end of the day I want to know what are all the things that I've changed.
Yes.
Okay. What's the easiest way of doing that?
Well, to have a version control system, because there are so many things that you can change. You can change dictionaries, you can change programs, you can change a program and roll it backwards and forwards half a dozen times.
That's right.
So as I said, there is no integrated version control within Visage at the moment.
Yeah.
It's coming, but it's not there currently.
But backing up a file at the beginning of the day, this is the way I used to do it in SP Plus, that's all, because there were so many different places that things were stored. I would back up the files, just into one file with a multi-part key, that said dictionary file, /file name, /item name, keep a record of all those from the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, run a comparison with all of the files with what it was like at the beginning of the day, and it would just produce a report of the half a dozen items that I'd changed. That's all.
Yeah, no, well, you could still do that by backing up those individual files if you want to. What I'm saying is there are many individual files associated with it. It's not just one. Right. If you wanted to find out what they were, your best bet is to do a search on a file name. Start it with V.
Yep.
Right, and there you have the 200 system level files that we actually have as part of Visage. Right, now some of these are not files that you'd actually go into, some aren't even Visage files in this case. So what you'd actually do is nominate, probably, Visage runtime as a system, and that will give you hopefully a smaller list. And Visage system files as well, which is 63, so you can get it down smaller. Now you can, if you wanted to, copy each of those out. As you start to develop more and more, that will become a bigger task. You can also put file triggers on the thing if you wanted to, before and after images.
It's just nice to have an audit, and even if you've got staff working for you, to be able to print off at the end of the day everything that's changed, even if it's in the live account, you know what I mean? Because I've found it so useful at place after place to be able to have a report that would be emailed every day to an email address of every object that changed that day, because 6 weeks' time somebody comes and says, oh, this report hasn't worked since the 14th of June. You can go back to the 14th of June in your email and see all the objects that changed that day. You might not know who changed them necessarily, but if it's a program, you can look at the program, maybe they put comments and saying who changed it or whatever. But it gives you some clue of where the problem might be.
Well, as I said, we are looking at introducing a version control option into Visage itself. If it's activated, you won't actually be able to make a change unless you've assigned yourself to a particular issue or a particular thing, which basically just identifies what it is you're doing. That will have you roll forward to type things to identify all the things that have changed as part of that. Because it then also becomes part of the patch management type thing, to be able to get everything changed with
the
it.
biggest problem with SB Plus was that you would change a field definition, or think you'd change the field definition, but you'd actually change, without knowing it, a half a dozen things. An online help entry in the online help file, perhaps, and
Yeah.
you know, 2 different or 3 different, you know, dictionary items in this file, and you always forget that you've changed, you know, I don't know, the length of some field in some file. You always forget things, you know. The idea of writing down every change you make just doesn't work. It never did.
No, well, it is being automated. It will be an option as to
Yeah.
whether you enable that or not. As I said, if you wanted to copy the individual files and do that comparison, it certainly is.
Never thought of that.
Yeah. It's just nice to have an audit, like an
Yeah,
operating
yeah.
system level audit.
You would say.
So it's invaluable in the book company because
Oh yeah. No,
you know, at that place, they would come and say, oh, we've just realised that for the last 6 weeks we haven't sent any orders to any of our suppliers. You say, well, why did it take 6 weeks for anyone to notice? You know what I mean?
because I thought it was
Yeah,
part
I
of
know.
the new feature that had been added.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Isn't that the standard
That's right.
comment?
There's no
This
bugs,
is a new
only,
feature.
There's no bugs, only undocumented features.
New features.
Well, it would be something like the service provider for the electronic commerce had changed the password or something, or your password, you know, when it dials out, was coming up with, you know, enter new password or something because it had expired after 12 months. Something weird like that. But, oh, God.
Just something I just want to show you quickly or briefly. A thing called filters. We sort of touched on this as one of those things I'll get back to you later on today about. What a filter allows you to do is filter what information you can actually see. Remember at one stage I said a thing you could do would be at a file level link a subroutine in that was called at read to go and change or apply security in terms of whether someone was allowed to see this record or something sort of. The other way of being able to block that sort of stuff out is by use of things called filters and validations. Now, what a filter is, you can just sort of read through this for the time being. I have a filter called AR Salesman on the AR Salesman file. Pretty innocuous stuff. And basically what it is saying is that for this dictionary item, entity, we want it to equal something. Don't know exactly what it is at the moment, but we certainly want it to equal something. So it's just like a point and click query, if you will, where we have access to all the dictionary items on that particular file, the operators that are actually in place, and then whether it's match every, match one, match them all type things. You can have multiple criteria and so forth physically in place. Okay, make sense? Think of this as a select statement. So what we're doing is saying select AR salesman with entity equal to something. What we then also have is a thing called a validation. You can have multiple filters, so multiple selection criteria and so forth. We also have a thing called a validation. Remember when we were setting up dictionaries and we had validation things that things to be validated against, and I said that was a file name? Well, I lied. Sorry. Guilty. Because you don't actually validate against a file, you validate against a validation. A validation is a lot like a file, but it's also a little bit different. Because a validation can have filters and so forth associated with it. You can have multiple validations against a file. For example, I can have a validation that will only get out active salesman for me. And the way that an active salesman is defined is basically through this filter. I don't really know what that does. We're just going to have a look here. And what this filter says that we want to select the AR salesman file based on the entity equal to something and inactive equal to something as well, where the something will get filled in later on. And where it's filled in is part of the actual validation itself. Salesman can appear on multiple files. It can appear on the salesman file, it can appear on the customer file, it can appear on an invoices file, it can appear in a number of places. So the source file name basically indicates which file we're talking about. If there's no file name here, it's basically everything that I haven't specified. Right? Remember, we had a selection criteria based on entity and also whether it was inactive or not. It's basically saying here, go and get the entity from the current entity. If we're talking about customers, the filter will actually go and change somewhat, because if we're maintaining customers, we want the entity to actually be based on the source, the home entity on the actual customer. You'll see over here, as I'm physically working around in this, because I've nominated my source file name was the customer's file, it's given me the dictionary of the customer file over here. Right, now in the customer file we have a thing called a home entity, in other words, who owns the customer. From an entity point of view, are they in New South Wales, are they in Victoria, are they in South Australia? And obviously you don't want a you may not want to have a New South Wales salesman tied to a South Australian customer. So the home entity is where we keep who owns the thing, and basically that filter that we had that said go and only select salesmen that have got an entity equal to something, this is where the something gets filled in. So it will go and get the home entity off the customer file and only show us salesmen that are from that entity. It will only allow us to enter salesmen that are actually from that entity. Right, so without having to do any code, if your customer wanted you to have those sorts of limits, and this is a real example for us, where a customer, one of our clients didn't want to be able to enter salesmen up from anywhere other than the current entity, all we did was come and put one of these validations in place. If you leave the validation blank, which I can do, it basically will go out and become the default thing for the file. I'll just show you some other things. There's things we haven't looked at called option sets. Actually, it's V option. And I got stacks of validations on here. Now these suckers, sometimes you have little lookup files. Open item, balance full, yes, no, male, female, active, inactive. Stacks of little bits of type files. Now you can either go and have those set up as individual programs if you wanted to, or data items somewhere. We give you a facility called option sets. And what an option set is basically, very simply, a key on a file, the values that we actually return to the program, and the corresponding text that is going to appear on it. So when we had those selection criteria before for customers in terms of the access operator, where we said it was greater than or less than or equal to and so forth, this is actually where that information was coming from. Here's the commands or the values that D3 knows about. Here's the corresponding English that we showed the people. Now, to access a validation over on your dictionary, I think we had, say, I'm trying to think of someone who's valid. Somewhere here I'll have something called an account type. No, I think we're here this morning. Okay, so we had a thing as to whether it's open item or balance forward, and that's brilliant. They haven't got the validation on there. Let's think of something else. Account closed, account status, no. I'll show you on the filter. We'll look at it itself. This is the file sitting behind those validation things. Remember, I had a thing up before of all of my options that had the valid things on there. What it's actually going to do is validate what I'm putting in against the option set file. That's just the file where these things actually sit. And it's going to use a validation called access operator. Now what that really does for us is sets the key to the file. Right, and that's all it actually does. So it's basically just saying, go out, read this record, and whatever you find there, go and display this list. No need to take much of this stuff in. It's sort of something to move on to. It's more a case of knowing that if you have an application where you have a file, and that file has, say, a multi-part key, and if it's got a 1 in it, it means something. If it's got 2 in it, it means something else. If it's got 3 in it, it means something else. And depending on whether it's a 1, 2 or 3, the content of the data actually is different. It actually has a totally different record layout to it. We have examples of this where we have a general catch-all file called a parameter file. Now physically, what this looks like is just a file. There's my general ledger parameters, there's my accounts receivable parameters, right? And the content of those things is totally different. And it all lives on the one file. But from Visage, I'd like to be able to treat that as if it was a real file. Now, how do I do that?
This is a sys file.
Right,
Yeah.
now the
Global
way...
variables. It was called,
Yeah.
The clutter file.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
You've got to have two of them, one for movable data and like incrementers and things, and one that's static.
So I have a file called GL param, right, set up in Visage. In terms of its database, it's actually just points out to the param file. No real surprise there, because that's where it physically goes and lives. But behind the scenes,
This is...
right, what I actually have is, in terms of a validation for GL param, it actually doesn't have a validation, but what it says is go and read that record. It's the one and only, it's a file that just has one record associated with it. So that when I go and write things or read things to GL param, I get no choice in the key. The key is GL param. But what it allows me to do is I can have a dictionary definition for GL param. So I now have a file or a pseudo file, and I now actually have a dictionary for that funny little parameter file that I have. So that's what data looks like if it's the GL param record. This is what it looks like if it's the accounts receivable parameter record. This is what it looks like if it's the accounts payable parameter record, and so forth. So it allows me to set up a dictionary that basically just relates to a single item on a file, and I can then treat it as if it's a file. So I can do get values, I can do set values and so forth to go and get this control information and so forth out. So if you had dealt with databases like Oracle and SQL and so forth, they will often call these things views, where here's my entire database, but I have a view, a restrict, set, and possibly a redefinition. They don't actually do the redefinitions, that's our extension, but they certainly allow you to restrict the data, like don't show all salesmen, only show the salesman from the current entity that I'm in. But likewise, we allow you to have these pseudo files. You can, if you designed your system over again, rather than putting that in a file with 50,000 other control records, perhaps you would actually have a file all by itself. Now you're not going to do that, and having a file for a single record doesn't make sense. But having a dictionary that defines what that information is has a great deal of value, especially from Visage, because you can then use your get values to go and find out, am I integrated to the general ledger, what's my control account, what period am I in, all of those things that you keep on the control file. So you simply set up a pseudo file, right? You create it as a real live file, and you just have a validation that corresponds to the key to that file. and then you can have a dictionary for it, and it just allows you to go and list that file, which has only got the one record in it, but it could be anything that starts with GL. Like that could have been a GL wildcard, or anything *3, or whatever it happens to be. And it just gives you the way of having a dictionary for one of these bits and pieces type files, so you can treat each element that's there as if it was a real file in its own right.
In the sys file, we have one for warehouse. Everything prefixed with a W is a warehouse.
Yep.
And one of the attributes is the description of the warehouse.
Yep.
So as you say, it now will become a warehouse file.
Yes, even though it still remains
In the sys file.
in the sys file,
Yeah.
it has exactly the same stuff. It's just that we now know how to populate it,
Yeah.
because you have a criteria and so forth there. We
It's
now have
huge.
we now have a dictionary for it, and from a Visage perspective, you can treat it like an ordinary file, right?
All these items, these aren't actual physical dictionary items in the file, are they?
They're physical
logical.
dictionary items on the VDictionary file,
Right, okay.
right? They're things that Visage knows about,
Right, okay.
right?
Okay, but they don't appear in the param file, whatever
No.
it is. Okay,
No,
beautiful.
not at all. But having said that, what I will find is that there will be a physical file that's created automatically as a Q file to that.
Okay.
Now, and one of the things we use behind the scenes, and just some stuff to be aware of, there is a file called VDict, which has got nothing in it.
Yep.
Or just a file type. However, if you have a look at the files in it, it's a different story. It actually has a separate sub-file for every file that you have on the system. And each of these sub-files status is actually too many commas. Each of these sub-files is a normal PIC dictionary. Right, so when we actually access your pre-existing files and so forth, what we do is we say something like, or exactly like, list AR/ACK status using VDict AR/ACK status. There, so we have things like allow jobs, and it's as if that was actually native to the physical file itself, and that's how we get by with not having to update the actual dictionaries for the files themselves, but we have our own dictionary. So the VDictionary is where the things actually reside. VDict is where the platform-specific dictionary for that file actually is, because how you do a dictionary in, say, Universe is going to be different to how it's going to be presented in D3. You don't have to worry about that, because the environment will just work out what the right way to do a physical dictionary is. But every file that you have, even a pseudo file, so to speak, will have a corresponding file entry for it, even if it's just a Q file entered. So with something like our param file, select MD with A1 equals Q and A3. See, we use A1s and A2s too. Yeah. Put a bit in there. So, yeah, we have a rather busy MD, as you can see. Best not to have 31,000 entries in your MD. Right, so 15, 16 counting. There's probably about 30 individual Q pointers there, each of representing a valid view of one or more records of us, because our param.doc file is the same as your sys file type stuff. But it means that you can look at the data, 52 of them, It means you can look at the data as if the files had been designed properly, even though they're not. Because once more, it doesn't make sense to have a physical file just for one record.
You don't want 50,000 physical files.
But equally as important, you do want to have a dictionary for the thing so that you know what information is where, what's in attribute 6 of your warehouse.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right? So it gives you all the benefits of the fully described dictionary and so forth without the overheads of having a whole stack of physically disparate files.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
You always end up with the dictionary of that file having, individual field definitions.
Yeah.
How many date fields there, or from date or to date, you've got approval screens, approval screens for starting a report or something, and usually the dictionary items all end up in that control file.
That's right. And I've tried to create a dictionary item of that control file, and the attribute 1, you see half a dozen attribute 1s. And one can be $1, dollars, the next one says description.
Yeah, that's right.
And
you're up to attribute number 653.
Yeah, so that's perfect. Yeah.
So it's just one of those little things that allows you to make hopefully some sense out of the chaos that is the applications you have. Now you're right. There's lots more. We could go on for days and days, but hopefully it's given you. Oh well, yeah, weeks and weeks. But hopefully, what it's enabled you and equipped you with is something of understanding in terms of the